Right, so before we move on, we first of all need to import each and everything that's going to help us in making this application. So let's just first of all import two things from KiwiMD. So right in here, we're just going to say KiwiMD.app. We're going to be importing this class MD app. Next, we're going to be importing the MD relative layout from KiwiMD as well. So from KiwiMD.uix.relative layout, we're going to be importing this class MD relative layout. Next, we're going to be importing a couple of things from Kiwi as well. So from kiwi.uix, drop down, we're going to be importing this class drop down. Next, we're going to be importing the button class. So from kiwi.uix.button, we're going to be importing this class button. Next, we're going to be importing the text input class as well. So from kiwi.uix.text input, we're going to be importing this class text input. Okay, next we're going to be importing the label class as well. So from kiwi.uix.label, we're going to be importing this class label. It is not okay. So from kiwi.uix.label, we're going to be importing this class label. Okay, so I think these are all the things that we need to import. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually create a class. And now inside of that class, I'm going to actually write down my entire application. So I'll just name this class as unit converter app. And now to this class, I'm going to actually pass this class that we've imported from KiwiMD, which is the MD app class. Okay, now inside of this class, first of all, I will just create my build method. So build, and in here, first of all, I'm going to actually create my layout. So right in here, I'll just create a variable layout in which I will just put my layout, and this is going to be equal to MD relative layout because this is going to be my layout for my application. Okay, so now this function will actually return this layout. So select dot layout, and now we have this build method, and now now we actually need to call this function so that it can actually show us on the window with this layout. So let's do it as well. And in here, I will just first of all have my I'll just say that if name it's going to be equal to underscore main, then what we want to do, we actually need to call this function build, and this function is actually inside this class it is actually inside unit converter app. And then in order to call the build method, we actually need to call the run method, and this run method is programmed to call this build method. And yeah, that's all we need to be doing. And now just execute this application. You're just gonna see that we will have a layout with just with some default width and height, and then we have some background color for this application as well by default. Okay, now the first of all, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna actually set our odd width and height for this window. So for this, we first of all need to import a window from Kiwi. So right in here, I will just say that from kiwi.core.window, we're gonna import window. And now right in here, let me just minimize this thing. And now in here, what we're gonna do is that with this window, we can actually give size, and it's just gonna be equal to a tuple. And now inside of this tuple, I can just define the height and width. So the width, it will be 500 pixels, and then for the height, it will be 500 pixels as well. Okay, so now we just execute this application, and now you're just gonna see this window, which is now pretty much small as compared to as compared to the previous time. So in here it is now 500 pixels in width and 500 pixels in height. Okay, now the next thing that we will do is that we will actually set the background color for this application as well. So right in here where we're having this layout, we can actually define our background color with this attribute, which is md underscore bg underscore color, and this is going to be equal to a list. And now inside of that list, we can just pass the RGB value of any color. Now you can just search the RGB value of any color on Google. You can just simply Google what is the RGB color of blue or gold or red or any color that you want, or light pink, whatever color you want. But I want the light pink color for my application. So the RGB value of light pink is 248, and then 200, and then 220. Okay, now just remember that this actually expect this attribute expect the RGB value of any color to be in between 0 to 1. So if you know, the RGB value is actually from 0 to 255. So the highest value of RGB is 255. So if you just divide this value by 255, each value by 255, this will actually give me a value which will be in between 0 to 1, and this will actually give the light pink color to my window. And let's just execute, and now you're going to see that we have this light pink background for this layout. Okay, now window, and the first widget we're going to put is actually going to be our title label. So right in here, I'm going to create a variable, and I will just name this variable as title label. You can just name it anything you want, and I'm going to put it equal to the class that we've imported from Kiwi, which is the label class. And the text on it is just going to be choose your converter. So choose your converter, and next is going to be its position. So right in here, I will just say that position underscore here is just going to be equal to one dictionary. And for center x, so for center underscore x, it's just going to be 0 0.5, and then for center y, so center underscore y, it will be 0.94. So 0.94. Okay. So now the next attribute will be the size of it. So size int is just going to be equal to a tuple, and size going to be 1 by 1. And next, we're just going to say what is going to be font size of that text. So the font size is just going to be a little bit bigger because the title, so it's going to be 40 pixels. And next, what is going to be the color on the text, color of the text? So the color of it will be, we again actually need to supply the RGB value. So in this case, we want a red color for our title. So it will be 1, 0, and 0. So that's the RGB value of red. And next, we actually need to define what is going to be the font name as well. So font name is just going to be equal to comic. Okay, so now let's just add this layout. So right in here, I'll just say that self dot layout dot add widget, and then self dot title label. Okay, so now let's just execute it. And this time you're going to see that we have this thing, which is the title label on our window. Okay, now in this way, we're just going to put different types of button, which will be actually our converter buttons. And once you exactly click on this button, then going to actually open that type of converter. So it will be actually buttons in here. First of all, the first converter we will have is the BMI converter. So I will actually create a button, and I will just name this button as BMI underscore button, and is it just going to be equal to this class button, and the text on it is just going to be equal to BMI, and next we just need to find the position of it. So position hint is just going to be equal to the stationary, and in here what we want for center x, so center underscore x, it will be 0.28, 0.28, and then for center y, so center underscore y, it will be 0.75. So 0.75. Okay, so that's going to be position. And next, we actually need to find the size hint as well. So size underscore hint is just going to be equal to one triple, and the size of it will be 0.23 0.23 by 0.17. 2717. Okay, so that's the size hint. Next, we just need to define the font name. So font name is just going to be equal to, again, comic. Next, that's our font name. Next, we just want the text on this button to be bold. So we're just going to set bold equal to true. Next, we're just going to say that what is going to be the font size. So font underscore size is going to be equal to 30 pixels. Okay, so font size is going to be 30 pixels. What is going to be the background color? So the background color, it is, I think, background underscore color, it is going to be equal to an RGB value, and the background color is going to be just define the RGB value. So it's actually light gray. So the RGB value is 211, 211, 211. And as I told you that we need to supply the RGB value from 0 to 1. So I'm going to actually divide it by 255 and then divide it by 255. Okay, so that's my background color. And yeah, that's all I need to be doing for this button. And now let's just put it on our widget. So self dot BMI button. Okay, so now let's just execute it, and you're gonna see this BMI button added right here on your layout. Okay, now similarly, we're just gonna be adding the length button, the area button, volume button, speed button, and mask button as well. So let's do it. So right in here, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna actually copy this whole thing. So copy, and I'm gonna actually paste it right in here. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually change the name. So the next button that I will have is the length label, and the text on it is going to be length. And now obviously we need to change the position. So the Y position is going to be the same, but for the X position it will be 0.68, and I think everything else is going to be the same. Yep, everything else is going to be the same as well. And now let me just first of all add it and let's just execute it to make sure that we have this layout. So dot layout and length button. Okay, so now let's just execute it, and now you will just see this length button added right here as well. And now similarly, we're just going to add more buttons as well on this window. Okay, so again, I'm going to actually paste that code, and then the third one will be the area button, and now the next one it is just going to be area, and now obviously we need to change the X position. So for the area button, it will be yep, for the length and area button, center X position will be 0.28, and the center Y position is going to be changed. Let me see what it is. It is actually zero point 0.5. Okay, so 0.50. And yeah, that's all we need to do for the area button. And yeah, now let's just add it to our layout, not layout. Come on, layout.add widget self dot area button. Okay, so now let's just execute this application once again, and yeah, our area button is at the right position. And now let's just do it for the next one is just going to be the volume button. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually change it to volume, and then here I'm going to change it to volume, and now I actually need to change the X position. So the X position of this button was 0.68, so it will be 68 as well, and now this time it will be 0.50. Okay, so now the next button is going to be the volume button, and then we have the speed button. Okay, so speed button, and this time we're just going to change it to speed, and for the speed button it will be 0.28 and then 0.25. Okay, so that's the speed button. And next we will have, let me scroll it to the left, and speed button, and then the last button we will have is the mask button. So right in here, what I'm going to do is that it will be mask, and in here let's just change it to mask. And for the mask button, okay, so for the mask button it will be 0.68, so 0.68, and then it will be 0.25. Okay, yep, 0.25. And yeah, that's all. I think now we just need to add it to our layout. So we have the area button, and then dot add widget self dot we have the volume button. Yep, and then self dot layout dot add widget self dot mask buttons into 1 2 3 4 5 6. Yeah, everything is done, and now let's execute this application. And actually we're actually missing one button. Yeah, that is the speed button, and that's because we haven't added it to a layout. So self dot layout dot add widget self dot speed. Okay, so speed. I think that we haven't created the speed button. It has been created. So what is wrong in it? So self dot speed button. Okay. So now let's just execute it, and now you should be able to see the speed button here as well. Okay. So these are going to be 6 types of converter. The one is going to be the BMI converter, length converter, area converter, volume converter, speed converter, and mass converter. Now, if you just want, you can just add other types of converter, like for example, the temperature converter. You can just add other types of converters as well if you want. If something is coming in your mind, you can do that as well. But these are going to be the 6 types of converter. And now say that when the user click on the BMI converter, then gonna actually open the kind of the UI of BMI where the user can actually input the height and his weight, and then click on the calculate BMI, and then it can actually tell you your BMI. Now, similarly, the user will be able to convert values into different lengths. Same goes for areas, volume, speed, and mass. But when the user click on the any of these button, it's gonna actually open the UI or the user interface of that converter. And all the units in which we're going to do the conversion. So I'm not going to write down all the units because it's just going to take a lot of time and there is actually no need to type. So what I've done is that I've created this notepad, and then now in that notepad I've actually created a dictionary, and then in here I have all these units created. I have put down all these units in this dictionary. Now these values, we have just laid down these values like this. So for example, we have this kilometer, and we have set its value equal to 1000. So in here we have kilometer, and now in here we have square kilometer. So if kilometer is equal to 1000, then square kilometer is obviously going to be 1000 multiplied by 1000, which is 100,000. Now similarly, if centimeter is equal to 0.01, then millimeter is going to be 0.01, because millimeter is 1/10 of centimeter. And then similarly, if meter is 1, then I think square meter or cubic meter is going to be 10 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 10, which is actually 1000. And now similarly, if in here we have, yeah, in here, if centimeter is equal to 0.01, then square centimeter is going to be 0.0001. Now similarly, if millimeter is equal to 0.001, then squared millimeter is going to be 0.000001, and then so on. So we have put down these values like this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy this entire thing. So just copy it, and we're just going to paste it right here in this function build. So right in here where we have created all these buttons, so we can actually put it right here if you want. So let's just put it, and yeah, that's all we need to be doing. So this is actually the dictionary of convergent factors. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to be doing is that since, so for example, if the user click on the length button, then we only want length units. So for example, the length units are millimeter, centimeter, meter, kilometer, foot, mile, yard, inch, and these are actually not the length unit. So for example, liter is not the length unit, milliliter is not the length unit, gallon is not the length unit. And now similarly, when the user say that the user click on the speed button, or for example, the user click on the area button, then these are actually not these are all the areas. So for example, acre, hectare, or these are all the units. For example, these are not the areas. For example, kilogram is not the area, gram is not the area, gallon is not the area. So what I've done is that I've actually separated down all the units in here I've actually laid down the chart for unit conversion. So for example, the length units are going to be millimeter, centimeter, meter, kilometer, foot, mile, yard, and inch, while the temperature unit, while we haven't put temperature, but if you want the temperature conversion in your application as well, then you can just add a button for temperature unit and then just add this temperature unit as well. And then the area units are going to be square meter, square kilometer, and then square foot, square mile, and all these units. And then volume units are going to be cubic meter, cubic centimeter, liter, milliliter, and gallon. Then we have the weight units and all these things. Okay, so now let me just copy this thing as well, because we actually need to separate it down so that the user, once the user click on the length unit, then the user should be able to see only these units, that is millimeter, centimeter, meter, and all these units, and not, for example, square meter and square kilometer, not this. Okay, so I've actually copied it, and now I'm gonna actually paste it right here. So right here. Okay, so this is actually the chart of our unit conversion. And now the third thing that I have is actually not important. We're not going to be using this list, but actually these are all the units that we're going to be using in this application, that is millimeter, centimeter, but we will not be needing this. We will not be needing this, so I'm not going to copy it. But this is actually the list of options that the user can actually select and then do the conversions. So yeah, these are all the things. And now since we have copied it, and now from the next video, we're gonna actually start working on these layouts, for example, on these user interfaces. So when the user click on the BMI button, then it should be able to open the user interface for BMI and so on. Working on our BMI calculator, and we're actually open the interface of BMI calculator when the user click on that button, which is this BMI button. So when the user click on it, it's gonna actually basically display that BMI calculator where the user can calculate his or her BMI. So in here, when this button gets clicked, everything right here that you're gonna see on this window will be removed, and we're gonna actually see the BMI calculator. So right in here, once this button will be clicked, only then it can actually display that user interface. So right in here, I'm going to actually bind the press event to this button. So right in here, I will just say that self dot be my button dot bind. So I'm going to bind it to an event, and that event is going to be the on press event. And when this button gets pressed, it's going to actually call a function, and we will just name this function as BMI calculator. Okay, now this function will actually display the user interface of BMI calculator whenever the BMI button gets pressed. Okay, so now let's just create this function right here. So I'm going to actually copy its name. So copy, and I'm going to actually create that function right here. So let me just minimize this thing, and BMI calculator, and obviously self. And now since we have actually bind the press event basically to this button, so this on press event is going to be passed to this function and will be received right here. Okay, so event. Okay, so now first of all, what this function will do is that it will actually remove each and everything, like for example, this title label, and then this BMI button, length button, mass button, volume button, everything, because we now only want to see the BMI calculator because the user has clicked, assuming that the user has clicked on the BMI button. Okay, so for now, for this, what we're going to do is that we're going to actually create a function, and that function will actually remove each and everything. So we will just name this function as, first of all, self dot, and we will just name this function as remove underscore everything. Let's type it. Okay, so remove everything. Okay, so now let's just create this function. So I'm just going to copy its name, and I'm going to actually create this right here, remove everything, and then obviously self. And now, as I told you that it will actually remove each and everything. So first of all, let's just remove the length button. So self dot length button. So length. In here it is. Yep. Self dot length. Oh, okay. So I have actually named it with this capital letter L. So length button dot position hint is just going to be equal to a dictionary, and in here I'm going to say that the center x position is going to be zero point 0.5, but now I'm going to actually basically type the center y position to a value so that it is actually now no more visible on the screen. So it's going to be equal to 20 or any value higher than 1 so that this length button is now no more visible on the window. Okay, so now next we're just going to do it for all the remaining buttons, like for example the BMI button as well. So this thing I'm going to actually paste it right in here with this dot, some dot, and now I'm going to actually do it for the mouse button dot position hint. I'm going to actually paste it. So dot position hint. And next, I'm just going to do it for the volume unit. So volume button, sorry. And then dot, and then this thing. And then I'm going to do it for the speed button as well. So speed button dot dot, and then this thing. And what else is left? So self dot yeah, this area button dot, and then this thing, and yeah, this can actually remove everything. Now in here, once everything is removed, I don't actually want to remove the title because I'm going to actually change the title. So previously it's choose your converter, but now since the user has clicked on the BMI button, so now the title is going to be the BMI calculator. Okay, so right in here, what I'm going to do after removing each and everything, I'm going to actually say that self dot title label dot text, it's just going to be equal to BMI calculator. Okay, so now let's just test it out to see if everything is going to be removed or not, and then it can actually display that text at the top of the BMI calculator or not. Okay, so now let's just execute this whole code once again, and I'll click on the BMI, and now you can just see that the text on the title label is now changed to BMI calculator, and now right in here everything is actually removed, and now our window is actually empty, and now we can actually put all the things that are required for the BMI calculator. Okay, so now right in here now our title label text is BMI calculator, and now right in here, first of all, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually create a label, and because for the BMI, we actually need two things, the height and then the weight. So first of all, I will just say that I'm going to actually ask the user to import the height. So height input it's just going to be equal to, first of all, it's going to be label. So height label, so underscore label, it is going to be equal to label and then the text, and it is going to be height in centimeter, height in centimeter. Okay, so height in centimeter. Next, what is going to be its position? So position hint is just going to be equal to a dictionary. And now the center x position. So center x position is going to be 0.35, and then center underscore y position is going to be 0.70. Okay, next we need to style this label. So the size hint is just going to be equal to size hint. It's just going to be equal to one tuple, and it will be 1 by 1. And then the font size, so font underscore size, it's going to be equal to 30. And then the color of it is going to be 100, which is the RGB value of red. Okay, so that's my height label. Next, I'm going to actually add it. First of all, let's just add it to our layout. So self dot layout dot add widget height. It is actually not like this. Self dot height label. Okay, so now we have the label for height, which is actually asking the user to input the height in centimeter, but now we should have that text input area where the user can actually input his height. So right in here, I'm going to say that self dot height underscore input is just going to be equal to text import, this class text input that we've imported from Kiwi, and the text on it is going to be empty because we will just give the user the opportunity to enter the text. So text is just going to be empty, and next we're just going to define the position of it. So position hint is just going to be this thing, and then the center x position is going to be 0.7. So 0.7 along x-axis, and then center y position is going to be so center y position is going to be 0.70 as well. Okay, so 0.70 as well. Okay, next, what we're gonna do is that obviously our size hand is the most important attribute. So size hand is just going to be equal to I don't want it to be appearing along x-axis all the way, so it will be zero point 0.3, and then for the height it will be none, because I'm going to actually set my own height. That's why in here I've set the height to none. So the height is just going to be equal to 48 pixels, and the reason I just set it here to none because I just want to input the height in centimeter. Sorry, in pixels, not in centimeter. Come on. Okay, so that's the height, and then the font size. Font size is just going to be equal to 29 pixels. Next, the foreground color. So foreground color is just going to be 0, and then zero point 0.5, and then 0. And then I actually need to define the font name. So let me just go into the next line. So the font name is just going to be comic. So comic, and yeah, that's all I need to be doing. And now let's just add it to our widget. So let me just add it to the left. So self dot layout dot add widget self dot height input. Okay, so that's the height input, and next we just need to do it for weight as well. So for doing this, what I'm gonna do is then I'll just add a command right here, and I'll just say that this one is actually for my height, and then the next one is going to be for my weight. So weight. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy this. So copy, and I'll actually paste it right here. Okay, so now let's change it to weight label, and in here it will be now weight. Not like this. So weight is just going to be in kilogram. So kilogram, and obviously I need to change. So for the weight label, the x position is going to be the same, but the y position is going to be 0.50. Okay, and everything else is going to be the same for this. All I just need to be doing is just to change this thing, and now in here we will have the weight input. So weight input, and now we actually need to change the x and y position. So along x-axis it will be zero point 0.7, and along y-axis it will be 0.50. So 0.50. Okay, so now in here we just need to add it to a widget. So weight import. Okay, so height in weight, and now we will now have a button, and when the user click on that button, it can only then calculate your BMI depending upon your height and weight that you have inputted. Okay, so right in here, first of all, let's just create that button, and we're just gonna name this button as BMI button. So self dot BMI. Well, you can change it to so BMI, and let's just name it as BMI convert button. So BMI convert button is just gonna be equal to this class button, and the text on it is going to be convert. So convert, well, it's not convert, it's simply calculates. Okay, so calculate. Next we just need to define the position of it. So position hand is just going to be equal to a dictionary, and for center x it's just going to be equal to zero point 0.5, zero point 0.5, and then for center y, so center y it will be, oops. Okay, so center y it will be 0.35. Okay, so now let's just move on to the next line. That's the center y, and now what is going to be the size? So size hand is just gonna be equal to it will be zero point 0.2, and then zero point 0.1. Okay, and next it's just going to be the size of it. It's going to be 75 by 75. Next, it's just going to be the font name. So font name is just going to be equal to comic. Comic. Next, one is we just want it to be bold. Okay, so bold is just going to be equal to true. Next one, it's just going to the font size. So font size is going to be equal to 20 pixels. What is going to be the background color of it? So background underscore color is just going to be red. So 1 and then 0 and then 0. So that's the background color. And now, once this button gets pressed, then what it's going to do is that it can actually calculate your BMI depending upon the height and weight that you have inputted in the text input, in the text input field. So first of all, I'm going to actually bind it to a function, and that function will actually take the input that we have inputted in the weight and height input fields, and then it will just calculate it according to your weight and height. Okay, so I'm gonna say that self dot BMI convert button dot find, and this time it's just gonna be the press, because when the user actually click on it, then only then it will actually target a function, or go on to a function, and that function is going to be self dot calculate BMI. Okay, so now, yep, this is what we're gonna be doing, and finally, let's just add this BMI to our this thing as well. So it will be self dot layout dot add widget, and then this one is going to be self dot BMI convert button. Okay, so now let's just create this function, that is actually this function. So copy, and we're just gonna create it right here. So right here. So def, then it's function, obviously self. And then in here, we actually need to pass that event, because that event will pass right here when that button gets pressed. Okay, so now in here, first of all, what I'm going to do is that I will first of all take the input from the height input. So let's say self dot height is just going to be equal to self dot height input dot text. Next, I'm going to actually take the weight. So self dot weight is just going to be equal to self dot weight input dot text. Okay, next, so in here, the weight and height is just going to be basically in the form of string. Now what I actually need to do is that I actually need to convert this into integer, because I want to actually perform some kind of numerical function on it. So that is why I actually need to convert it into integer. So let's say that my height is just going to be, I'm going to actually use this building class in Python, which is the integer, which will actually convert that height into integer form. Now, similarly for weight as well. So weight just going to be equal to integer, and then self dot weight. Okay, so now once that is actually taken, now I actually need to, let me just do it later on. Okay, so first of all, I will just say that first of all, I need to make sure that the user has inputted something, some numerical value inside the input field. So right in here, I will first of all check if self. Let me just add it to the bracket, and in here I will just check that if self dot weight is actually not equal to empty. Make sure, I just need to make sure that there is actually the user has input something in the weight field. And another thing, I need to make sure that the user has input something in the height input field as well. So height is just not equal to empty. If that's not empty, then we actually need to calculate the BMI. Now the formula for BMI is, so BMI is just equal to, now, the formula for BMI is actually, for this, I actually need to calculate the square of height. So right in here, what I will do is that I will just say that self dot height is just going to be equal to self dot height multiply by self dot height. Okay, so now in here, I will actually basically calculate the BMI up to 3 or 4 decimal places. So let's say that round it. But now, first of all, I just need to define the formula, and it is actually self dot weight divided by self dot height. Next, I actually need to basically multiply this whole thing, whatever is the answer of it, by 10,000. So what I will do is that I will actually put it inside another bracket, and then this bracket, and now I'm gonna actually multiply this whole thing with 10,000. So 10,000, and then I'm going to actually round it up to three decimal places. Okay, now in here we have a, since in here we now have the BMI value in this variable BMI, and now I'm going to check if the user is actually underweight, overweight, or if he's normal. So right in here, first of all, let me just scroll it down, and now in here I'll just check if self.bmi is actually less than 18, then what I need to do is that I actually need to basically create a label, and on that label I'm gonna actually display if you are overweight or underweight. So if the BMI is less than 18, then here I actually need to display that you are underweight. You are underweight. But I'm gonna actually display this thing on a label. So first of all, let's just create this label right here. So I'm gonna actually create this label. Yep, let me just create it right here. So yep, right in here, I'll just say that self dot BMI underscore label is just gonna be equal to this class label, and at this moment the text on it is actually equal to empty because we're just going to be setting that later on. So the text on it is actually empty when the position of it at the moment. So at this moment it will not be visible, but later on it's just going to be visible. So the center X position is just going to be 0.35, and then the center Y position is going to be a value that is actually not visible on my screen. So let us set it equal to 50. You're going to set it to any other value which is greater than 1. Okay, next it's just going to be size of it. So size hand is just going to be equal to a tuple, and it will be 1 by 1. Why am I actually getting this error? Okay, that's because let me just okay in here actually move to the next line. Okay, so size underscore height is just gonna be equal to 1 by 1. Next, I will just say what is going to the font size. So font size is just gonna be equal to 30 pixels. I will just say that what is going to be the color. So the color is going to be an RGB value, and it's going to be red. Okay. Next, I need to add this widget to our layout as well. So self.layout.add widget, self.bmi label. So BMI label. Okay, so now right in here, um, once in here, now we actually need to put this text on our label. So what I'm going to do is that inside of that function, I will just say that first of all, since on the label, we actually need to put the string text while this value is an integer. So first of all, what we will do is that we will convert this value into integer. So sorry, string. So let's say that self.bmi is going to be equal to str, and then self.bmi. And now in here, in this variable, we now have that value in the form of a string. Okay, now we're gonna actually put this thing on our label. So where it is, yeah, right in here, I will just say that self dot BMI label dot text, which is gonna be equal to basically basically first of all, I'm going to actually display the BMI, the actual BMI that we have calculated right here, and then we just convert it into string right here. And then with it, I'm going to actually display that you are underweight, or we can just simply say underweight. Okay, so yep, this is what we're gonna basically display. And now we actually need to define, we actually need to put it on our window. Previously it's out of the window, and now we can actually put it on our window. So we're gonna say that BMI label. So BMI label dot position hand is just gonna be equal to a dictionary, and for center X it's just gonna be equal to 0 0.5, and then for center underscore Y, it's just going to be equal to the center Y. It will be 0.20. Okay, so that is going to be the case if the BMI is less than 18. But if the BMI is greater than 22, or I think it is 25 if the person is overweight. So self dot BMI is greater than 22, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy this whole thing. So copy, I'm going to paste it right in here. And in here, in this case, I think it is when the BMI is greater than 25 or is that 24. In that case, the user is overweight. Overweight. And so we can actually put this whole thing. Else, if that's not the case, then the user is actually, the BMI of that user is actually normal. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy it and I'm going to paste it. And now right in here, I'm going to change it to normal. All right. So before calculating the BMI, I also need to make sure that my basically the my BMI label is actually empty. So right in here, because it may be possible, so say that the user has inputted some height and weight value and then calculated its BMI, and then say that the user again want to calculate it, then in here on the BMI label, we are going to have a new weight depending on that height and weight. So first of all, in here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say that self dot BMI label dot text here is just going to be equal to empty. All right, and yeah, I think that's all we need to be doing. And now finally, let's just execute it. And I hope everything is just going to be fine. Okay, so we're just getting this error. You can convert the no attribute self. And this error is on line number 78. Okay, so let's just go. What is wrong on self? Don't calculate BMI. Okay, so we're just using the self 2 times. Okay, so now let's just execute this application once again, and yup, everything is looking fine. Okay, so now let's just, so I'm gonna actually input my own height and weight. So my height is 171 centimeters, is I guess, yeah, 171 centimeter, and I have a weight of 56 kilogram. Okay, calculate, and yeah, I'm pretty much normal. I have a normal weight. So now let's just calculate the BMI of another person whose BMI say that he's a very short height and it is, let's say, 64 centimeter, while its weight is just in normal, so it is 80 kilogram. Okay, so now let's just calculate the BMI is saying that it is overweight. Which I need to put some space right here. So in here, what I actually need to do, yep, right in here. Okay, so I actually need some space right in here, and then right in here as well. Okay, so now I can actually execute it once again and click on BMI, and so I'm going to actually put on my on height, which is 171 centimeter, and my weight is 56 or 57. I guess it's 155 kilogram or maybe 54. Okay, so calculate and still I'm normal, 18.4. I'm actually pretty close to normal. But yeah, I'm actually proud of it and I'm actually normal. So you can just calculate your own BMI if you want. Now in the next video, what we're going to do is that we're going to actually work on the length label and then the area. Well, these things are pretty much simple. We're going to be using the same interface for length, area, volume, speed, and mass calculator, but this one is actually different because for the BMI, we don't have to convert a value into another value. We actually have to specify the height and input. But for the length, area, volume, and speed and mass, we're going to be using the same interface. So there is not enough coding left for this application. The most coding that was required is actually for this. Not working on this length button, and when this length button gets clicked, what it's going to do is that it can actually open the user interface where the user can be able to convert different types of lengths. So when this gets clicked, it will actually be a user interface which will contain two text input fields, and then we will have two drop downs in which the user can just choose any length unit in which you want to do the conversion. So first of all, what we're going to do is that we will just create two text input fields so that the user can write any value that you want to convert. So right in here inside of my build function, so that's my build function, and in here what I'm going to do is that I will just create two text input field. So I will say the self, and I'll just name my first text input field as text input one, which is going to be text input, and then the text on it is going to be initially empty because we will let the user to input any text. And then in here, the second argument, what is going to be its position. So at this moment, it will not be visible. So I will just say that its center-X position is going to be 0.3, while the center Y position is going to be center Y position So set y position is going to be, you can just type here any value, but actually it will be at this location once we want to make it visible. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to remove this point and we'll just say it will be visible. It will be at this position, which is actually the point where this text input field will not be visible. Okay, so that's the position. And next we just need to define what is going to be the size, which is the very important attribute for text input field. It's going to be equal to tuple and it will be 0.3, and then for the height it will be none because I want to set my own height, and I will just say that HAGHT it is going to equal to it's going to be equal to 48 pixels. And what is going to be the font size? So font underscore size is just going to be equal to 20 pixels. And now what's going to be the foreground color? So foreground foreground underscore color is just going to be an RGB value. It's going to be 0 and then zero point 0.5 and then 0. Okay, so the next attribute is going to be the font name. So let me just move to the next line. So font underscore name is just going to be equal to, again, the same font. You can just use any other font if you want. And now we have created this text input number one. And now what we're going to do is that, first of all, we'll just minimize it. And now what we will do is that we'll just add it to our layout. So let's say self.layout.add, which is just going to be equal to, not equal to, it is actually self.text input number one. Okay, now similarly, we'll just create another text input field as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'll actually copy it and I'll just paste it right here. And in here, I'll just named it as text input number two. And now this text input number two, we're just going to display our output. So it's going to be at this position. And what is going to be the y position? It is going to be, so once we want to make it visible, it will be at this 0.35. So now we're just going to remove it, this point, because we want this to not appear on our window at this moment. So now let's set it as well. Okay, so now we have these two text input field, and now what I want to do is that when this button gets pressed, where is that button? Okay, so it's at the above. Okay, so when this length button gets pressed, so right in here, let me just find event to it. So you just add it right here. Okay, so let me just add it right here. So let me just move to the next line. Okay, so when the button gets pressed, then what it's going to do is that it will actually invoke a function, and we will just name this function as length underscore calculator. Okay, so that's going to be the function, and that function, this length calculator, will actually display all the widgets that we actually need for the length calculator. So let me just copy the name of this function. Let me just copy it, and now let's just create this function. Okay, let's just create it at the top right here. Actually, right here. Okay, so first of all, def, its function, and then help, and then here, since we have actually have binded to an event, so that event will be passed and it will be received right here. Okay, so first of all, just like we have done for our PMI calculator, we have first of all removed each and everything. So self dot remove everything, and actually it is actually this function that is actually removing each and everything. That is all the buttons and everything. Okay, so first of all, you're just going to remove each and everything. Next, we're just going to set the title. So set dot, it is title label. So title label, it's just going to be equal to, so the text on it is it's going to be equal to, it's going to be equal to length, length converter. Okay, so length converter. Okay, next in here, we're just gonna display all the widgets. That is the drop down in which the user can just choose any length in which you want to do the conversion. So what I'm gonna do is that I will actually create a function, and that function will actually take the job of adding all the widgets for my length calculator. So right in here, let's just create this function, and well, let's just first of all call it, and we'll just name this function as at underscore widgets. And now since in here we're actually doing it for the length for the length calculator, so what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna actually pass this list where I've created it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that I'll actually pass this list because in the drop down I only want my length unit. I do not want to see my temperature units or area units or volume units. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna actually only pass to this function. We're just gonna add all the layouts. What is that function? Okay, so right in here, we're just gonna pass the length units to this function. Okay, so now in here, let's just create this function and yep, let's just create it right here. Okay, so def and then the name of this function, which is add underscore uh, widgets, and in here since we have passed this thing, so it will be received in a variable, and let's name this variable as selections. Okay, so selections, and first of all what I'm going to do is that I will just say that since I actually need to bind it to an event, so sorry, the self, so um, self dot selection selections is just going to be equal to selections. Okay, so that's the first thing. And now what I'm going to do is that I'll just add this drop down. So for the drop down, we already have imported this class drop down from Kiwi, and now we're just gonna actually create this drop down using that class. So where is that function? Okay, here it is. Okay, so since I will have two drop down, so I will just name my first drop down as drop down number one. So right in here, they just create our first drop down, and I'll just name it as drop down number one. It's just going to be equal to this class and drop down. And now what I'm going to do is that I will just add all the length units. So I have passed all the length unit in this variable selections. So I've actually passed all the lengths in the form of a list. So this is now actually a list. And now I actually need to iterate over or loop over all this list so that I can just add all the length unit in this drop down. Okay, so right in here, I actually need to use for loop. So I'll just say that for selection and self dot selections. What I'm going to do is that first of all, I'll just create button, and button is just going to be equal to, so the text on it is just going to be equal to selection. Next, I'm just saying what is going to be size hint. So size underscore hint underscore y. So for the y, it will be none because I want to set my height in pixels, and I will just say that the height is just going to be 30 pixels. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, so let me just add a comment right here because it's actually difficult to understand this drop down, how we're actually adding different kinds of items to it. So now we will find the button for showing the text when the text is selected. So when it is selected. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I will actually bind. So text button dot bind, and now what I want to bind. So when this button gets pressed and then actually released, so now the event I actually want to bind is the on release event and not the on press event. So on press and on release are two different things. So on press means when the button gets pressed, and then on release means when it's actually pressed, and then pressed button is actually released. Then what you want to do is that you actually need to, let me just put on light, so lambda, and then button, and then I'll just say that drop down number one, dot select, and then we should be able to select the text on that button. So button dot text. Okay, so this simply means that I want to just show the text whenever I just select any button in my drop down. So I'm just adding or just creating these button one by one, and now it actually means that from the drop down that I just named as drop down number one, if it is select any text, then actually select that text, and then just simply select it once I actually release that button. Okay, so this is what it actually means. And now what we'll do is that we will add the button inside the drop down list. So right in here, I'll just say that, let me scroll it down to make sure everything is visible. So drop down number one dot add widget, and then we just want to add it right here. So in here, we have created all the buttons, and now in here, we're actually adding all these buttons in my drop down. Okay, so that's what it is. And now, so there should be some kind of text that is just going to be selected by default. Because why I'm just getting this error right here? Because here we should have this colon. Okay, so there should be some kind of default text that is going to appear on my button when I execute the application. So when the len button gets pressed, then it can actually open the user interface, and on the drop down I will have some default text selected. So for this, I need to actually create my main button, and on the main button, we will actually have some default text or the text that we will select from the drop down. So right in here, for this, we will have a main button. So since we will have two main buttons, so we'll just have, first of all, I just name it as main button number one. So main button number one is going to be equal to this class button, and the text on it is going to be select. So text on it by default it's just going to be select, which is actually asking the user to select any option from the drop down. Next, what we want to do is that I actually want to set the size hint. So size hint is just going to be done and none. Next, I just want to tell what is going to the position. We're going to define the position in pixels. So the position is going to be 270 pixels along x-axis and then 302 pixels along y-axis. Okay, so that's the position. And then the next argument is going to be the height. What is going to be the height of this button? So the height is going to be 50 pixels. Okay, so that's my main button number one. I actually need, and now, so right in here, what I'm gonna do is that I actually need to bind my drop down as well. So drop down dot bind, not bind, oops, not add widget. So drop down dot bind, and actually it should not be, first of all, I need to bind my main button. So self dot main button number one dot bind and not ball, so bind. And so what I want to bind, I actually want to bind an event that is going to be my on this event. And that is when the drop down gets clicked and then released, then you actually need to open the drop down. So drop down number one and then dot open. Okay, so I think we do not need these parentheses right here. Yeah, we do not need these parentheses right here because we are not calling a function. Okay, so this actually means when, on the main button, we have this text select, and now it's simply saying when the main button gets pressed and then when it is released, then just simply open that drop down. And on the drop down, we have added all the length units. So once the user actually click on the main button and then releases it, then going to actually show all the length unit that we have passed right here in this variable selections. Okay, so that's what it is. And now I actually want to bind the drop down on what. So say that the user actually selects some kind of text, then what I will actually need to tell that the text on the main button is now going to be the text that the user has selected from the drop down number one. So this is what I'm going to do, and I'll just say that on select because the user will select some kind of text from the drop down. So the event I actually need to bind is the on select event. So on select, it's just going to be, first of all, let me just write so and then instance instance x and set attribute, and for the set attribute, I will just say that self dot main button number one. So the main button number one text, and the next one is just going to be basically this variable x. Okay, so now what does it actually mean? So it actually means when the user will select anything from drop down number one, then the text or that the user has selected will be actually the text, will actually be going to be the text on my main button. Simple dimple. And now finally, I actually need to add. So right in here, I'll just say that self dot layout dot add widget, and I'll just say self dot main button number one. Okay, so now this is what it is, and now so this is our first drop down. So drop down, drop. drop down number 1. So that's my first drop down. And now let's just create the second drop down. So I'm going to actually create it right here. So let's first of all add a command. So drop down number 2. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is that I don't want to type this whole thing once again. So I'm going to actually copy it. So copy, and I'm going to actually paste it right in here. And I'll just name this thing as drop number 2. And this one is going to be drop down number 2 as well, and drop down number 2, sorry, main button number 2, and then main button number 2 as well, and drop down number 2 and main button number 2 as well, and then similarly main button number 2 as well. Okay, now this main button should appear at the different location. So it will be main button number 2 is going to be 270 pixels along x-axis, and along the y-axis it will be different, and it will be at 150 pixels along y-axis. I think that we have done each and everything. Let me just recheck it. So drop down number 2. Okay, so here we have drop down number 2 and main button number 2, main button number 2, and here we will have drop down number 2, because I don't want to open drop down number 1 once the second main button gets clicked. Okay, so drop down number 2, main button number 2. Yep, everything is now looking okay. And now what I'm going to do, so right in here, where it is, length calculator. Okay, so now what it will do, first of all, it will just remove everything when the length button gets clicked, and then we will just see this thing, that is the length converter. And then on the add widgets, what I'm going to see is actually all the drop down. And now we actually need to add, so previously we have these two text input fields, and now what we're going to do, so at this moment it is actually not visible, but now we can actually make it visible. So right in here, I actually need to send the position hint. So the first one is 0.65 and the second one is 0.35. Okay, so right in here, in the add widget, I'm going to actually add all both of these buttons. So self dot text input number 1 dot position hint is just going to be this thing. So the center X position is going to be, I think, zero point 0.3, and then the center Y position is going to be 0.65. Yep. And now similarly, we just do it for text input number 2 as well. So dot position hint is going to be equal to center X, and then I'm not sure what it is. So center X, yeah, along x-axis it will be the same. Yeah, on the x it will be the same, but on the center Y it will be different. So center underscore Y, I think it is 0.35. So let me just recheck it. Okay, so text input number 1 and text input number 2, and then here we have created it. Where it is? Okay, so zero point 0.3 and zero point 0.3 and 6.5 and 3.5. Okay, it's absolutely fine. And now we actually have defined the position here as well. And now in here, okay, so let me just first of all execute it to see if it is actually working or not at this point or not. So now when the length button gets clicked, first of all, it's going to remove all these buttons. It's going to change the title right here. So let me just click on it. Okay, so it is working absolutely fine. We have, so you're going to see that the title is just changed. We have this text input field where the user can just input any numerical value. And we're just going to validate it later on that to make sure that the user, first of all, we just need to make sure that the user has typed something in this text input field. And the next thing that we need to validate is that it is actually a numerical value and not a string value. Next, we actually need to check our dropdown. So let me just click on it. Okay, so you can just see that we're just seeing all the length unit added to this dropdown. So when the main button gets clicked, it's going to actually open this drop down, and then drop down we have all the length units. And now when the user will click any button in the drop down, then what it's going to do is that it's going to add that text that the user has selected from this drop down on my main button. So let's just see if it's working or not. So let's just select kilometer, and I'm going to see that it's saying kilometer. And now let's just check this one as well. Say that it is meter, and you can see that it's working absolutely fine. Okay, now the next thing that we will do is that we will now have this convert button, and when the convert button gets clicked, it can actually take this text and then we'll convert it according to this unit that the user has selected right here. Okay, so for now, let's just close it because everything is working fine. And now we're just gonna add the convert button, not here, because the convert button is going to be different for every calculator or for every conversion thing. So right in here we're just going to add this convert button. So right in here, okay, let's just create this convert button right here. But first of all, minimizing this thing, self dot convert convert button is just going to be equal to button, and then the text is just going to be convert. And well, actually, do I have created the convert button previously? Yep, I have. I do have. And instead of just writing this thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy it. So copy. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually paste it right in here. So let's just remove this thing, paste it. Now what we're going to do is that we'll just change it to convert button and then convert button. Okay, so now in here, instead of this calculate, I'll just say that it is actually convert. So zero point 0.5 and then 0.35. I think that I actually need to change the Y position to 0.15, not 0.35. And I think everything else is absolutely fine. Yep. But the only thing we need to change is when this button gets pressed, we actually need to call the length function, the calculate length function, and not the calculate BMI function. So in here, we're just going to create a function, and that function is going to be calculate length. Okay, so now let's just copy this function. We're just going to create it. So let's just create this function right here. So def, then this thing. And in here, since we have bind it to an event, so that event will be passed and it will be received right here. Okay, so in the calculate length function, first of all, we'll just take the text from text input field number one. So right in here, I'll just say that input value is just going to be equal to self dot text input number one. So text, okay. So right in here, yes, okay. So it is actually, what I name this? So actually name that where I've actually first of all created it. Self dot text input number one, text input number one. Okay, so right in here it will be self dot text input number one dot text. Next, what I want to do is that I'm going to actually create, now I actually need to get the text on my two main buttons. So right in here, we have these two main buttons on our drop down. And now what I'm going to do is I actually need to get the text because I actually need to know the unit in which the user want to do the conversion. So I'll just say that input unit is just going to be equal to self dot main button number one dot text. Next, it is going to be output unit. So output unit is just going to be equal to self dot main button number two dot text. Okay, so now in here, we actually have this input value in the form of a string because the text input takes value in the form of a string. But now since we want to do some kind of mathematical computation on this value, which is actually stored in this variable input value, so we actually need to convert it into integer value. So I'll just say that input value is going to be int, which is actually a class that will convert this value into integer, and that is actually input value. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I will just say that result, in which we will just store that result. Result is just going to be equal to, actually want to round it to some decimal places. So round, and now we actually need to write down the formula. So it is actually input value uh, multiply self dot. It is actually input unit. Yep. So first of all, it is unit. I'm actually pointing towards my unit dictionary where I've created it. Okay, I'm actually pointing towards this thing. So I'm gonna actually copy it. Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna actually paste it. Do I created this thing with self? Yep. Okay. So right in here, where it is. Oops. Okay, so right in here, what I'm gonna do is that unit text, and then we have all these things in that dictionary. So now we can actually access it with this bracket, and it is actually my input unit, and then divided by self dot unit text, and then the output unit. So output units. Okay, and now I just want to round it up to 5 decimal places. And now in here, what I'm going to do is that I'm actually getting the text on input field number one, and it's actually taking that value, and then here we're actually converting it according to the input unit and then the output unit. Now we just want to show that result on text input number two. So right in here, what I will do is that I will just say that self dot text input number two. So text input number two dot text is just going to equal to result. But I actually need to make sure that this value is actually in the form of a string, because this text input always takes value in the form of a string. So right in here, what I will do is that let's say that result is just going to be equal to string and then result. And yeah, now it should work absolutely fine. And now we can just execute this application to see if it is working or not. So first of all, let me just make sure that everything is okay. Okay, so I think, yeah, let just execute it. Okay, so it is saying that unattended BMI calculator. Okay, so line number 117. Number 117. So this thing, okay, so right in here, I actually need to put, I don't know how this happens, but let's just add it, indented actually. Oops, not like this. Okay, so where it is, I can just find it once again. Okay, so I actually need to indent it at the right position. So this was simply selected, press tab, and now this error should be gone. Okay, so now let's just execute it. Okay, so click on the length, and now let's just select. So say that I just want to convert. I just want to check how many kilometers or yeah, how many how much so let's just select this unit into meters. I want to check 1 kilometer contain how many meters. So click on the oops, we do not have the convert button. Okay, so right in here where I have created it, I actually need to add it to my layout as well. So in here we actually created it, but now I need to add it to a layout as well. So self dot layout dot add weight, and that is actually the convert button. Okay, so now let's just execute it, and now it should just work fine. And now you can see the this convert button. Let's just select 1 kilometer and then meter, and just say I just want to check 1 kilometer contain how many meters. Click on convert, and you can see that it contain 1000 meter, because you know that 1 kilometer contain 1000 meter. Okay, now let's just select some other kind of thing. So say that I just want to check like 100 um, centimeter contains how many milliliter. Okay, so click on convert. Okay, so it is saying that it is contain 1000 millimeters. Okay, so now let's just have some other value. So say that I just want to check. Okay, so 1 mile, or say that 10 miles contain how many kilometers? So kilometers, and now click on the convert button and just say it just contain 16.09344. Okay, so now our length calculator is now absolutely ready, and I think that our code is now pretty much ready as well. Now, what we're going to do is that we're just going to be using the same code over and over again because we have created functions, and the more important functions are actually this add layout, it's add widgets function, and then the remove everything function. And now what I'm going to do is that, and here it is actually calculating the length. But what we can do is that we can actually make this function as a function that just going to calculate everything, because the formula for the remaining function is just going to be the same. So I will just name this function as calculate value. And now right in here, what I'm going to do is that where's that convert button? Okay, so right in here, this time it will be calculate value and not calculate length, because this function is going to be the same for all the remaining units. That is the area unit, volume unit, speed unit, and mass unit. Area, volume, speed, and mass converter as well, just like we have calculated the length converter. So let's do it. So previously, we had these two functions, that is the length calculator function, and then when the convert button gets clicked, it is actually invoking this function, calculate value. So now this function and then this function is going to be the same for my remaining unit converters as well. So now what I'm going to do is that first of all, I'm just going to change it. So since it's going to be the same for all unit converters, so I'm just going to change the name to be more generic one. That is the unit calculator. And now right in here, inside when I have this button, I'm gonna actually change it to unit converter as well. So unit calculator. Okay, now similarly, I actually need to do it for my area calculator. What I will do is that I will just simply copy it. So copy, and I'm gonna actually pass it right in here. So what it's going to do once this area button gets clicked, it's also calling this function unit converter. And now let's just go to this function unit converter. Unit converter is first of all, again, just doing the same thing. Now we actually need to deal with a different title, because once the user click on the area button, and it's going to be the area converter and not the length converter. So what I'm going to do is that when the area button gets pressed, then we actually need to pass some argument as well, as I'm actually referencing this function. So what I'm going to do is that for this, we have a partial class in Python that we first of all need to import. We just want to pass some kind of argument when an event actually happened. So right in here, right here at the top, we're just gonna basically import the partial class from functools. From functools, we're just gonna import the partial class. Okay, so now right in here, basically, yep, right in here, I'm gonna actually get rid of this thing because we do not need to pass it like this. Now what I'm gonna do is that I will just say that length button dot bind. And I actually want to bind an event, and that is going to be the same event, which is the press event. Now just it's going to be equal to partial. Now, first of all, in the partial class, I actually need to basically name the function. So it is actually the unit calculator function, and the next argument we can just pass any number of arguments. So in this case, it is going to be length uh, calculated. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy this thing, and now let me just first of all remove this thing, because I'm just going to do it for area as well. So let's just remove this thing, and now I'll just paste this code right in here. And let me just minimize it to make sure everything is visible. And now I just change it to area. So area, and this time the title is going to be area calculator. Okay, so in here we're actually passing basically this argument to this function. So that argument will be received. So this argument will be received. Where is my function? Okay, so yep, that's my function. Yep, that's my function. And right in here, that argument is going to be received secondly. So the second argument, sorry, the first one is obviously is always self, while the second one is going to be title, and then the third one is going to be the event. And now right in here, the text on my title label is just going to be this variable. So it is actually going to be self.title. But what I'm going to do is that first of all, I'll just create this variable self.title, which is going to be this variable title. And then now the title label dot text is just going to be self.title. Okay, so now when I just press the area button, then I'm actually passing the area converter string, which will be received right here, and then the title label will now be this thing. So another thing I want to do is that the convert button is going to be the same for all my buttons as for all my unit converters as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually cut it from here, and I'm going to actually paste it in my build function somewhere right here. So it will be right here. And now in here, we actually need to change the position of it. So just change position. And now what I'm going to do is then actually pass the this thing. So convert button, and make sure that you just add it to a layout as well. So let's just add it to a layout. So self.layout dot add widget self dot convert button. And now right here in the unit converter, unit calculator, I mean, actually need to first of all get rid of this thing because I have added it there. And once it has added the widgets, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to basically show the convert button as well. So convert button dot position is just going to be this thing. But now I just need to change this to point because I want the convert button now to be visible on my screen. Okay, so yeah, let me just execute it and see if it's working. So for the length calculator, you're gonna see that the title is this thing, but now for the area calculator, the title should be area calculator. And now same goes for the remaining ones as well. So let's just do it. Let's just do it. So right in here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy this thing. So copy, and I'm going to actually paste it right in here. And this time it is going to be volume calculator. So volume calculator, and I'm going to change it to one button. Next is going to be more same for speed. Well, and let me just minimize this thing. Um, it's going to be speed, and here it will be speed as well. And then similarly, we have mass, and so I just do it for mass as well. And let me just first of all change it to mass, and then in here it will be mass calculator. Okay, so now let me just execute this application once again. And right in here, it should now work. So just click on the volume. You're going to see that we have the volume calculator. And then similarly, we just click on the mass. You're going to see it is actually now a mass calculator. But now another problem is that since I'm actually now on my mass calculator, but when I just click on it, you're going to see that I'm actually seeing all the length unit. I should be able to see only the mass units right here. So you can see that again, I'm just seeing all the mass units. So now right in here, so let me just minimize this whole thing. So previously in the unit, oops, what has just happened? I just don't know. Okay, so in the unit converter, you can just see that in here, we're just adding all the length units, and that is why just adding the length units in all type of unit converters. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually pass this thing right here in this function as well. So right in here, so for example, if we have a length calculator, then what we want is that we only want length units. So for example, let me just scroll it down. Okay, so that's what this is. So if we have the length converter, then we should only see length units. If we have area units, we should only see area units. If we have volume units, we should only see volume units. So this is what we can actually pass to this button. So right in here, in here, after the string, the next thing that we want to pass, since it is the length button, so the next thing that we're just going to pass is basically the self dot um, length units. And now similarly, I'm going to actually do it right here as well. And this will be self dot area units. And then the next one is going to be the volume units. So self dot volume units. Oops, not like this. Volume units. Okay, next is going to be speed buttons. So right in here, to this thing, it will be self dot um speed units. So speed, why is it not? Okay, so let me just check out its name. What is its name? So it is actually named as, okay, we do not have speeds units right here. We have weight units, with length units, and then we have area units. Okay, so we do not have, um, I think that the area units and then the speed units are going to be the same. Yep, right in here. Or if you want, you can just calculate you can just add your speed units right in here. Like you just add another list and just add all the speed units, like for example, kilometer, meter, and then mile for let me just do it or you can just do it by yourself. Yeah, let's just do it by yourself. But for now in here I'm going to add the length unit instead of so in here in my speed units, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the length units. So self dot length units, and then for my mass units I'm going to add self dot mass units. Okay, so let's just see what we have for the mass. Okay, so we have the area is actually volume units. Yep, it is actually volume units. So right in here for my mass unit, I'm gonna actually pass. I'm just adding this comma here. It should be here. Okay, so self dot mass. It is actually, what is it? It is actually weight input. What kind of input is it? I think just add weight units here as well. Let me just check it once again. So it is actually volume units. For the mass, we have volume units. Before the volume units. So right in here, for the mass, I'm going to add all the volume units. Or in here, if you want, you can just change it to, I think it is weight units. Yep, is weight inputs. Yeah, there it is. And yeah, that's all we need to be doing. And now finally, what I'm going to be doing is it going to be weight units or simply weight? Oh, not weight input. It is actually weight. Weight. Oh my goodness, what's happening on weight units? Okay, so yeah, that's all we need to be doing, and all I need to do is that this thing will be received in the unit calculator function right here. So it's going to be we just name it. We're just gonna name it as units. Okay, units, and now in here just gonna add this unit. So self dot units, but first of all, actually need to invent the self as well. So self dot units is going to be units. And yeah, that's all we need to be doing. And now everything else should work absolutely fine. And it is giving us this error, has no attribute, length units. So right in here, we have the length units. So find it to the length units, area units, and all these things, then what is wrong? I think that is actually not accessing this whole chart. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually cut it right from here. So cut from here, and I'm going to actually paste this thing, this whole thing somewhere in here. Okay, so now let's just execute it and hopefully it should now work. Okay, so just click on the length unit. It's just going to show you all the length units, right? And now just execute it once again. And I'll say that I just click on the um, volume units. So it should now show only the volume units. And now you can just see that it's actually showing you only the volume units. So say that you want to convert something like 5 liters into a few milliliters. So milliliters, click on the convert button and you can see that 5 liter contain 5000 milliliter. And now same goes for the remaining converters as well. So for example, if you just click on the area unit, you're just going to see all the area units. So that say that you just want to convert, say that, so in here we will have acre and say that you just want to convert it into hectares. So say that you just want to convert 10 acre into some kind of hectares. So 10 acre contain 4.04686 hectares. So just familiar with area units, then this is what it is. Yep. And our unit converter application is 100% ready. And now there is going to be one simple dimple assignment for you. I'm not going to do it because it's pretty much simple. Now what you need to do, let's say that you just have this area calculator and now you just want to actually say that you just want a mass calculator now, assuming that you have this area calculator open right here. Now there should be some way that you just actually go back and then open on that whole all these buttons where you can just choose any type of calculator. So just simply add this go back button right here, and when the user click on that button, then what it will do that it will just simply let me just explain before I end this video. So when the user click on this build fun so when the user click on this go back function, then what it's going to do is that it's going to actually say that you actually need the entire this whole code in the main function, and then I just create a function main, and when you click on the back function, then all you need to do is that you need to actually call the build function and what sorry the main function, and you actually need to call this main function right here, and that main function will actually display all these things once again. So this is what this main function will do. Or what you can do is that instead of that main function, what you can do is that since you have created it right here, then just simply when the user click on the go back function, you can actually call the main function, and you can just simply reset the position of all these widgets, that is the length button, the area button, volume button, speed button, and removing all these widgets that were previous right here in the unit converter as the calculate BMI, and then the in here we have some kinds of text input fields in here in the add widgets. All you need to do is that once you click on the go back function, now all of these widgets, that is the main button and then the drop downs and then the text input fields, they should actually go away, and then the main function will actually reset the position of all of these basically these widgets to this position once again. So it is actually pretty simple, Dimple. So just do it by yourself and let me know once you are actually done, and just share your code with this whole code one last time. So first of all, we've imported each and everything, all these things that we actually need for this application. And then we have this class, and now inside of that class, we have this build function. Inside of this build function, first of all, displaying my layout, and then all these buttons, that is the title label. So by default the title will be choose your converter, but it will be changed to something else depending upon the user input, what button the user has clicked. And then we have this BMI button, length button, area button, volume button, speed button, all of these added toward layout. And then we have the text input fields. Well, these text input fields will not be visible at this moment. It will be visible when the user click on any of these buttons, like the mouse button, volume button, speed button, or whatever it is. So these are the two text input fields, and we have the convert button. So the convert button at this moment will not be visible as well. So first of all, say that the user click on the length button. So the length button is actually invoking this function unit calculator. So now what this unit calculator first function is first of all doing that it's actually removing each and everything by actually making invisible all the buttons that were previously visible, and then we are setting the title. So if that is the length button gets pressed, then the title that we have passed right here is the length calculator. If the area button gets pressed, then the title that we have passed right here is the area calculator. And then here the unit is going to be the units that are actually being depending upon the unit, depending upon the type of unit converter the user has opened, and we have passed it right here this variable, and so then we bind it to self, and then the title label, and then add widgets, and then we want to add basically the drop down list, and then in the drop down list we only want to display that unit in which we want to do the conversion. And then in here we have displayed the unit on the convert button as well. And now let's just go to this add widget function. The add widget function is simply displaying these two drop downs. And then in here, what we have done is that we're actually setting the position of text input number one and text input number two to be visible. So previously it was invisible, but now it is actually visible. So that is why we are setting the Y position to be in between 0 to 1, because 0 to 1 is going to the position where widgets are going to be visible. So 0.65 and then 0.35 are going to be visible on my window. And then when the convert button gets clicked, it is actually calling this function calculate value. And first of all, calculate is actually taking the input from the user. And now in here, what you can do is that you can actually add this if statement. And in the if statement, you can just check if input value is not equal to null. If it is not null, then what you can do is that you can actually try to execute this code. You can actually try to execute this code, uh, and then in the except block, what you can do is that you can just create a label, and that label will display some kind of text and set. So there might be like two. The first one is that if the input value is actually empty, if it is empty, then it can actually come in the else block. But if that is not empty, then it would try to execute this line of code. But it may be possible that the user has entered some kind of string value in that input field. So if that's the case, then it obviously won't execute this line of code, because here it is actually trying to perform some computation on numerical value. And in here, what we will do is that, yeah, actually, what we will do is that we will actually put this thing. So let me just, uh, yeah, this thing, and we will just put this whole thing in the try and example block. So try to execute these lines of codes. Now put it inside the try block. Okay. So first of all, if we just try to convert this value into an integer value, and if it doesn't convert it in integer value, means that it is some kind of string value or non-integer value. So it's gonna come inside this except block, So except, and you can just create a label, and on that label, you will just display the error message saying trends, the value must be, or you can just simply say non-numeric value. Okay, so right in here, it will first of all try to execute all these lines of code, and if it doesn't, then just simply come to this except block. But in here, inside the try block, if it will see first of all if the input field is empty or not. So if it is not empty, it will just simply display the result to you and on text input field number two. But If it is actually empty, then just come inside the else block, and then we'll just display something on the error label saying that um, please input some. So this is how we will just do validation of this application. And yeah, then the user will, after seeing this message on the so just in your case, just simply create that label, and if you just come to this else block, just display this tags. You just come to the except block, then just display this tags on that label. So just do it by yourself. It's not tricky at all. Just pretty simple, dimple. Um, but yeah, this is what this application is doing, and I hope this is actually a very useful application. Now you have it on your phone, you can just simply do any type of conversion. And actually, if there is something else, like for example, what temperature units are missing, then what you can do is that you can just add the temperature units in your application, or some other kind of units that you want in your application, because you now know how to actually add you now actually know how to add a unit converter, and now you can actually add a lot of new feature inside this unit converter by adding some kind of new units, or whatever you want. Just share your code with everyone else and let me know if you have any problem with this application. You can just directly email me or ask me directly, or you can just ask your question in the question answer section, and I will just get back to you there as soon as possible.